Okay, Drew Glastenberger, Vice President for Operations. Afternoon, everybody. Morning, whatever it is. I want to do a little poll just for my own curiosity. How many people in here have made a satellite contact in the last year, by show of hands? That's pretty good, about a third maybe. How many in the last month? Pretty much the same third. Last week? Couple, okay. For those who haven't made a contact, why? just give me a reason why. Newbie, learning. Just getting started. Okay, that's a good one. I like that one. I hear a lot about, hey, there's just not anything up there anymore. I've been hearing that for about 5 years at Hamfest. Take a guess how many satellites that you could make a contact on today with the right equipment. Just 15? 17. If you live where I do, in Florida, make it 19, because there's 2 satellites that are low inclination satellites are only on over, there's one that's only on over South America. So there's all sorts of satellites up there. If you haven't seen this is the AMSAT status page off of the website. I'll show you where you can get, how you can get to that in the next slide. Bob Berninga, you still in here, Bob? This was Bob's idea, Bob and Dave Carr, several years, almost a decade ago. We now host it on the AMSAT webpage. One of the problems new people have sometimes is knowing when a particular satellite is on, because not all the satellites are on all the time. Sometimes they're on schedules, they change modes, and it can be a little difficult for somebody who's not tied in to follow. So by going to the AMSAT webpage and clicking on the status link, it brings up this chart. And on the left side there, you see you've got all the different satellite names. The majority of those, you can click on them and go to an information page that tells you the frequencies and all the quirks about that satellite. You got dates across the top, and every square is a 2-hour block. When you see blue, that means people are reporting the satellite is active and you can make contacts through it. Yellow is telemetry only. Red is not heard. Orange is there's conflicting reports, because sometimes you get 2 reports in the same block right on either side of a mode change. And then down on the ISS on the bottom, sometimes you'll see an ISS voice where the astronauts are making contacts, and that's in purple. This is a great resource for you guys that are trying to get in and start making contacts. You can go to this and find out what's active when. And then we've got a list down here on the right side of all the active satellites, and I'm going to run through those real quick. I don't have a whole lot of slides, but I want to talk to you more about what you need to know. A07, still operational, launched in 1974, died and came back to life. A lot of you have heard the story about this by now, but a battery that shorted and killed the satellite evidently opened up at some point, and now the transponders work again. This is a great satellite, 1,450 kilometers up, great orbit. It's old. It's only running off the off the solar panels. It's easy to overload it. This is probably not the one to start with. I want to ask everybody in the room that operates, please be careful with A07. If you're running more than about 5 or 10 watts, you're running too much power on it. Because recently we've had some issues. We're in a bad solar illumination period where over the U.S. the sun is shining on the end of the satellite with no solar panels. So there's not a whole lot of energy to run things, and too strong of an uplink signal will kill it. It flips it into mode A, which is not as usable. So I want to ask everybody, if you're using A07, 5 or 10 watts is plenty. Even on an Omni, 5 or 10 watts is plenty. FO29 continues to be the workhorse satellite because of its broad 100 kilohertz wide transponder and the fact that it's up at 1,200 kilometers. It gives it a nice footprint. A couple of years ago, AMSAT, our Chinese affiliate, launched a group launch of 7. There were 9 satellites, 7 that had transponders or repeaters on them. These are all the XW satellites, 2A, 2B, 2C, 2D, 2E passed away, and 2F. And also Lilac Sat 2, which is up at the top there. These satellites are Mode B, mode UV, 70 centimeters up, 2 meters down. They have 20 kilohertz wide transponders on them. They are very strong satellites. They're sort of low, but they're very strong. And what's really neat is they come over in a line. So you'll work one, and a couple minutes later you can work the next one, and a couple minutes later you can work the next one. It makes it real handy if you want to sit down in the late afternoon, early evening when they come over, or the early morning passes, and work satellites for a solid hour. NO44 is still kicking on some passes when illumination is good. Packet satellite, 145/825 digipeater. SO50 is our workhorse FM repeater satellite. It's been up quite a while. It's not the easiest one to hear in the world, but it's very easy to get into, and it sees the most activity. AO73, EO79, and EO88 and UCube up at the top of the list are all FunCube transponders from AMSAT UK. These all have various schedules and quirks about them. They work great, but they each have an individual personality, and sometimes they're on, sometimes they're not. I would encourage you to go to each description on the web page to figure that out. A lot of it has to do when the satellite's illuminated. Digipeater on the ISS is back on 2 meters and working well. And that NO84 also has a digipeater and a PSK transponder, 10 meter PSK up, 70 centimeter PSK down. So there's a lot out there, a lot of different modes, and I encourage you guys to give them all a try. The last two down at the bottom of the list there, you probably can't even see them in the back of the room. IO86 is great if you live south of Florida or north of Uruguay or so. That's a low inclination satellite that the Indonesians launched a few years ago. It has a FM repeater and an APRS digipeater on it. It's only on rarely, but if you live in Florida, Texas, or anywhere south of there, southern Texas, you might have a shot at operating it. And then LO87 is from AMSAT Argentina. It's a payload on another small satellite. And unfortunately, they've only been activating it over South America and Europe over the command stations. Before I go on, any questions on this? Yes, sir.
Which one do I use on field day?
The one you practiced with for the month before field day.
Okay, good.
Field day, don't wait till field day to try. Get on the air, get sharp, get your skills back up, and if the lowest pass in the direction with the least people is the one you want to try on field day. And don't look for me, I'll be under a rock hiding. Field day gives me the heebie-jeebies on satellites because it's such a madhouse. Any other questions before we move on? Bob?
Yeah, that low inclination, what is inclination?
6 degrees.
Okay. Does that mean if you're in southern Florida, every hour and a half, 24 hours a day, you have a pass?
Not 24 hours a day, but I get about 4 of them in a row. I live near Tampa, and I only have 4 degrees as my maximum elevation. A little bit further south, and you get them, if you live near the equator, you get them every 90 minutes. Yeah, and that helps make up for the polar satellites, which we only see about half as much as the people that live further north.
In terms of voice, some of these are only SSB, correct?
Yeah, right now, FM is AO85, SO50, and Lilacsat-2. Lilacsat-2 operates on a schedule. It resets every 24 hours or so due to some radiation problems. So it's kind of random. That's one that you would really want to look here and see when it's been active and try it then.
So the two most reliable on an FM are
AO85 and SO50. And then we've got 3 more coming in the next year just from AMSAT NA. The rest are all linear transponders or the PSK31 or digipeater. Where do we find this? If you go to the AMSAT webpage and right up top next to the big finger, you go to satellite info, and this whole column here has got all sorts of good stuff. Current status is right here, and that takes you to that page. It's also amsat.org/status. Past predictions, status. These are upcoming operations, people going to DXCC countries or rare grids. And then here, communication satellites will take you to everything that you can make a two-way contact on. Down here in station and operating hints, you've got all sorts of projects You know, are you getting descents on Moj? Here's how you fix it. Do you need to build an antenna? Here's 5 or 6 of them to choose from. All sorts of good stuff. That's kind of our it's not a trademark, I hope, hints and kinks area. That's, you know, a good spot to go if you're looking for a project or an answer to a question. This is my favorite part of my presentation here every year. Get to talk about what's coming. I can't guarantee you that all of these are going to happen. I almost certainly say that none of them are going to happen on time. That's just the nature of the business. Some of the ones I've talked about in years past didn't happen at all. So take these with a grain of salt, but you can get a glimpse of what's coming up. LilacsSat 2 is already in orbit. LilacsSat 1 is going to be deployed from the ISS next week. So LilacsSat 1 has got some really interesting stuff on it. It's going to have a FM to codec 2 transponder. So they're going to listen to multiple FM frequencies on the uplink, put them together, sum the audios, and send it down on the codec 2 downlink. It's also going to have an APRS digipeater and a camera on it. And that should be deployed from the ISS as part of the QB50 project next week. QB50 is a scientific project with 50 satellites, and they're going to look at, they're researching the upper atmosphere as these satellites decay. So it'll be a low satellite, but it should be fun if you're set up to work.
And last, how long?
I don't know. I don't know the mass of it, so I couldn't tell you, but probably less than 6 months. CAS-4A and 4B, these are from AMSAT, from CAMSAT in China. They're transponder packages just like the XW2 satellites, and they are on commercial imaging satellites. The coordination for these said that it was going to be a March 31st launch. We haven't seen it yet. Sometimes information on launches out of China is difficult. We don't hear about it until the day before usually, or maybe the day after. But these are going to be transponder satellites. These are going to be kind of interesting. They're going to be in a 42-degree inclination orbit from what I can gather. So there'll be a lot more passes east to west type, or I'm sorry, west to east type passes in the U.S. So they're not going to go to a polar orbit. That could be very interesting. JY1SAT is another FunCube project. It's scheduled right now to launch in the first quarter of next year on a SpaceX launch. This will have the FunCube style transponder on it, and it'll also have a digital slow scan downlink, a set of preloaded pictures that'll be loaded up to it. K2SAT is from the Republic of Korea Air Force Academy. It has as a secondary mission a VU-FM repeater. This is a 3U CubeSat, and from what I gather, it's supposed to go on the H-2 rocket from Japan in 2018. ESEO, we've been hearing about this one for about a decade. This is the European Student Earth Orbiter. AMSAT UK is working to provide a amateur payload to go on that. It will have an L-band uplink and a VHF downlink. It is capable of doing a LV-FM repeater, and it will also have the standard 1.2K BPSK telemetry on 2 meters. They also have a high-speed telemetry mode, 4800, so that'll be interesting, and we're looking to see that at the end of this year, beginning of next year. JSAT-1 is from the Radio Amateur Society of Thailand. This is a 1U satellite with a VU repeater like FO29, but only 30 kilohertz wide, and they're looking to launch that in 2018. Another new one that popped up on the radar recently is called Juvenile, and that one is from a group in China. It's a 3U satellite. It's supposed to have a VU-FM repeater and a slow scan downlink where the user can send a command up to take a picture and downlink it. That could be very interesting. Luckily, they don't have to go through the licensing that we have to go through the cameras on our satellites. And then just released this week was 2 satellites from that AMSAT Francophone was involved in, and I couldn't match the names up. I've got the call signs up here. Keep an eye on the AMSAT News Service for more information about these. These are part of the QB50, and they also have VU FM repeaters in them that should be active at some point. So there's a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of new satellites coming up, and I encourage everybody to stay tuned to ANS, check the website, and check the AMSAT bulletin board, Facebook group, AMSAT Twitter. We'll try to get this information out as soon as it becomes available. As Barry talked about, we've got FalconSat 3 coming up. I'm really excited about this. FalconSat 3 is very similar in operation to parts of AO51. As Barry said, it was launched in 2007. It was originally a 560-kilometer orbit, 35-degree inclination. It's down to between 468 and 480 something now, but we've still got several years before it'll re-enter, so we'll get some good use out of it. It's going to operate as a VU store and forward PACSat. It's running at 9600 baud. It's capable of faster. We haven't had a PACSat since AO51 ceased operation, so it'll be interesting to have this option back again. Right now it'll sustain a 1-watt downlink, so it'll be very easy to hear. That opens up some interesting options for possibly less than base station style operation. We're still learning about the satellite. Mark Hammond and I are learning what we can about it. I'm resurrecting my 9600 baud station to be able to control everything. Mark's already been working with it some. We are getting ready to assume control on this one. The low inclination orbit, 35 degrees is pretty low inclination orbit. It could be interesting. The passes we'll see in the next slide are not what you expect out of an amateur satellite a lot of times. It's a big satellite, and if you look, I'm sorry it's so low on the slide. The receive antenna is a canted whip, and then the transmit antenna is over on the other corner. Transmit antenna is here, and then the receive antenna is here. These are S-band, not amateur frequency transmit patches and a omnidirectional turnstile here. We're not going to be using these, but you can see it's a good sized satellite. Here it is bolted on the outside of the ESPA ring on the Atlas V before launch. There's an idea of the footprint, somewhere between ISS and one of the XW satellites, still capable of coast-to-coast coverage. It's a store and forward, so it really doesn't matter. You can upload a message and have somebody in Taiwan reply to it. This is the ground track on it, so you can see if you're north of Virginia, Colorado, Northern California, your antennas are never going to go anywhere other than south, west through to east. All the passes come from west to east. If you live down south like I do, here's a typical day's worth of passes. 6 UTC, 8 UTC, 10, 12, 13, 14, 16 UTC. They all come in a row. So it's going to be interesting, a little change of pace. A couple minutes, just a minute or two left here. I wanted to give an opportunity to let you know about the SatNogs group. They're affiliated with AMSAT. They're a bunch of guys that have put together a ground station network that collects telemetry off of CubeSats and forwards it to a central server. They've got some really great stuff. Their booth is right across from us in Building 1. And I encourage you to go by and see them. They've got some neat designs for a ASL rotor that you can print using a 3D printer and put together. And they've got some interesting software and possibly kits available for downlinking telemetry from these satellites and providing a service to some of the university projects. Any questions? Ask Jerry. He's right over here. No. Yes, sir.
Drew, you might mention AMSAT Droid, which is a free app for droid folks, and basically does everything they need for production.
Yeah, AMSAT Droids is put together by a member AMSAT UK, and so if you run an Android on your phone, you can download it. It's free, I guess. I'm an iOS guy, but it's a great program. and lets you know when the satellites are up. Yes, sir. I'm sorry?
What's the iOS version of Traffic First extension?
There's a lot of iOS ones. There's not a version of that particular one. Personally, I use GoSatWatch. It's a pretty good one. There's a lot of them on iOS. Look for the ones that are set up specifically for radio, for satellites and for amateur radio. Some of the ones that'll do ISS are kind of clunky when you try to do other stuff with them.